Hey, Mike, what do Kelly Slater and PT have in common?
I don't know. They're both world champs?
Nope, they both own Endless Summer box set.
Oh my God, rad. You guys, you can get it too. The link's in the show notes. Welcome back, everybody, to the QuiverCast. This is Mike, your host, and this is all brought to you by YourAudioLegacy.com and QuiverBuilder.com. And please check out my other podcast, The Stinky Booties, I do with my buddy, Billy. Let's roll. Hello, everybody. This is Mike here with the QuiverCast, and we got a very special guest today. And introductions, it's a little different. We got an artist. Are you an artist or a surfer first? This is actually my first question, and then I'll read the rest.
It depends on the day. It's both.
Okay. And you're also an author, or assume?
I made a book.
You made a book. Okay. That's an author, right?
I guess it's more of a picture book.
A picture book. Okay. Yeah. And then you've kind of done everything in the surf industry. Mike DeNicola. DeNicola.
Yeah, okay. That's how we Americanize it. I guess in Italian it would be DeNicola.
Are you Italian?
Well, I'm first generation. I was born here. My dad was born in Germany and then grew up in Italy. Okay. And then immigrated into the U.S.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, is he German?
Well, you know what? The roots, the DeNicola family name is Italian. Okay. So his father was Italian.
Okay. Okay.
And I still have family that lives in Italy, actually.
Oh, rad.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so my full name is Michael Torquato DeNicola.
Torquato.
So we say DeNicola, and Torquato is what I use for my artwork.
Okay.
So
you want to talk about that first?
Sure.
How you use that name? How is that name used?
Well, when I first started wanting to show my work out in the public, it was around the time when we were starting to make websites, right?
Okay.
And so when I thought, okay, well, I'm going to do Mike DeNicola art. Okay. I thought that would be pretty simple. People would get what it is.
Yes.
And it was already taken.
Yeah.
And then there was a comedian named Mike DeNicola. Uh-huh. And so all the Mike DeNicolas somehow were taken. Like, what the fuck? Like, yeah. And also my dad's name is Mike DeNicola as well.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, like, what distinguishes me? And it's really my middle name, which is Torquato.
Rad.
So growing up, I was always Michael T. DeNicola because Torquato was weird, and I never wanted to admit, like, I'm a weirdo. Like, it was like, people just assumed it was like Thomas or, something like that.
Right.
And so as I wanted to show that I was unique and what I do is unique and I come from a unique place, that's where I started using Torquato and signing my work with it. Okay. And when I made a website, it's called I Am Torquato.
Yep.
So of all the Mike DeNicolas, I'm the only one that's a Torquato.
Okay. It's a rad middle name.
So that's where it came from.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're a surfer.
Yes, I am a surfer.
Okay. Do you remember when you started surfing? How old you were?
I do.
All right.
Yeah.
How was that?
My first surfboard I got when I was 12 years old.
Okay.
Prior to that, we lived in Costa Mesa. Okay. And so my mom loved going to the beach. She was a sunbather. Mm-hmm. My sister and I would play around the back bay. Okay. Learned to like skimboard, and we were swimming and doing that.
Just groms.
Just groms on the bay side.
Yeah.
But when my dad would get off work, then we'd go across the street to the big beach where there were waves because my dad wanted to go body surfing.
Cool.
So early on, got to learn to swim in the ocean and ride waves and body surf. Then we started boogie boarding and did that. We moved to Mission Viejo, and so started hanging out more like around Salt Creek and in San Clemente and T Street and those spots.
Yep.
And then I remember boogie boarding at T Street and seeing this other little kid start to stand up on his boogie board.
Oh.
And it was a guy named Matt Archibald. And so I'm watching this kid going, well, shit, if he's standing up on a boogie board, then we all started like standing up on boogie boards. And we got like, I remember there was a boogie board called the Boat Boogie. It was an oversized boogie board.
Okay.
And so we were doing that.
Now, hold on, I'll stop you. Did you make friends with Matt at that point?
I did not make friends with him, but he was like this grom that was doing things I wanted to learn how to do.
Yeah.
Like he was, I think we're
inspiration. Maybe?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
Like we're close to the same age. I might be like a year older or a couple of years older.
Okay.
But same like grom hood boogie boards at the beach.
Yeah.
And this guy was doing something that was really special.
Oh, cool.
So,
that's funny.
My dad, where he worked, one of his buddies from work surfed.
Oh, okay.
And they, him and his son we were like the same age, and we all met up in Laguna Beach at Thalia Street one afternoon.
All
and
right.
my dad and I brought our boogie boards, and they brought their surfboards. And so we were going, well, how does this work? Because they had buoys, and like boogie boarders are over here, surfers are over there. And so they went surfing, and like that was cool. And then we were left on the other side of the buoy, like in like boogie board. We're like, okay, we can't do this. We got to learn how to surf.
Yeah.
And so that was like the impetus right there,
Okay.
right there at Thalia Street. And so
And
we
whose
went and
idea was it? Your dad's or yours?
I think it was kind of
Mutual?
both of us,
yeah.
but we both felt that thing of, wow, they're doing something cool.
You're left
and
out.
we feel like we're missing out on something.
Yeah.
And so we
rad.
we got softboards, and then we got hardboards. And but my first surfboard was from my cousin who grew up in Pacific Beach and was part of the La Jolla scene and all that. It was a caster. It was a 7.2 single fin caster.
Wow.
So when I was 12, I think I got it from him for like $75.
Sick.
And I remember I was a little kid, like lugging it around like 204 and those beach breaks in San Clemente,
Yeah.
and just getting smashed and getting pushed by white water and trying to get to my feet. But the first time I did, I just thought, wow, this is something special. And I got hooked.
Wow.
So it goes back to like literally
a big
being 12,
staircase.
12 years old.
204s.
Oh, yeah.
That's a hike down the hill.
Yep.
For sure. All right. So then you were hooked.
I was hooked.
And what about your dad? What was your dad's thoughts?
He got hooked too.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we learned to surf together.
Rad.
And, you know, I grew up basically in Mission Viejo. So in the
Yeah.
4th grade, we moved from Costa Mesa to Mission Viejo. And you're inland in Mission Viejo, but if you go straight out Crown Valley, you're at Salt Creek.
Yep.
If you go right down the freeway, you're in San Clemente.
Yep.
And then a little further, you're at Trestles.
Yep.
So we had a motorhome. Weekends were spent at San Onofre.
Okay.
You know, during the weeks, the local guys that were older, I hitch rides with them to go surf the different beach breaks.
Okay.
But by the time I got to high school, my morning PE class was at Salt Creek.
Oh,
so we
okay.
had surf team and surf team practice, you know, and all those things. So
Was this in high school?
that's high school.
Okay.
Yeah. And so prior to that, I was always around older guys who surfed, and I lived in what's basically the heart of the surf industry. So I got to see real high level of surfing from an early age.
What guys? Who are you looking up to?
Boy, locally, like if you go to Salt
local.
Creek, guys like Mike Cruikshank, Mike
Yeah.
Howard, Kevin Billy, Chris Billy, who's my age.
Yeah.
Like all of those kinds of guys. You go down south and it'd be guys like Jimmy Hogan. And I can remember the first time I saw Martin Potter surf when I was a little kid.
Wow.
He surfed at T Street and at 204 and did things that just literally blew my mind.
Yep.
And I just thought, oh, well, that's what you do.
Yeah.
That's the level. Like you know.
So you're seeing guys like Chris Billy and Kevin
Oh, yeah.
Billy, all those guys like surfing gravels, getting
Oh, yeah.
photos. And,
Well, and being down there, like spending time on the beach and like with all those groms and those kids was one thing. But then at a certain time of the day, like when the sun would get right, Flame and those guys would come down to shoot.
Yep.
So you'd see all the pros coming to like perform in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So basically everything that I was seeing in the cameras, I was watching unfold at the beach. So I learned pretty easy like what the level was, or learned pretty early, I should say, of what the level was and who the guys were. And it put me right into the heart of the brands and surfing and like that whole scene. So I grew up around it.
Yeah. My question to you, since you weren't a guy that lived down the street from there, though, you lived down the street, but down a little bit, and you were surfing different breaks.
Yeah.
How was it? Were you let into the crew?
Well, you know,
Or were you kind of always an outsider? Like, how was it?
I was always an outsider, and I've always felt like I am an outsider,
Okay.
even now, like
Yep.
even when I have local spots, because I've always felt that way. But the thing that was awesome about it was that I could surf well enough to know the guys that surf well, and then I got in with those guys.
Yeah.
So even though I didn't live at the beach, at those beaches, I could go hang, and we all became friends.
Okay.
So I felt like at a certain point, I got a little bit of a hall pass to where I could go surf all these different spots. And I knew all the guys.
Yeah.
So I had to learn to respect. I was never a local in that I was territorial and what localism used to mean.
Okay.
I knew how to play that game, but I also wanted to go out and surf with the best guys.
Yeah.
So wherever they were, I would go, and that's who I wanted to hang
And
with.
you recognized faces, and they recognized you.
Totally. And after enough time, you start to know everybody.
Right.
And so I grew up, I think I was really lucky to be an inlander because I didn't get stuck surfing one beach. And so surfing with my dad, like I would go surf Trestles or Creek or these spots, but then on the weekends I'd go surf San Onofre and surf, go surf Doheny.
Yep.
So I surf all kinds of different boards, all kinds of different breaks, and just really, loved surfing and learned to try to do it all.
Okay, so how was the surf check performed? This is before 976. Well, there might have been 976 surf, but there wasn't Surfline.
No,
so what made
this
you
is pre that.
go to Salt Creek versus T Street or Lowers or whatever?
Proximity, how I could get a ride.
Oh,
Sometimes I had
who you're
PE
going
class,
with.
so I had to be there
Salt Creek.
every morning at
But this
a
is
certain
Salt
amount of
Creek's
time.
like heyday. This is when Salt Creek was.
Oh,
the
yeah.
break.
Well, I mean, I haven't surfed there in years. I think a lot of the same guys are still the same guys there. Like
Possibly,
there's generations that have passed on. And,
Yeah.
and in fact, I've heard some of those guys talk about on podcasts and things. And there's rad history like in that area.
Yeah.
So much of surf history and culture and, the brands and the icons came out of that zone.
In the 80s, Salt Creek was probably the photograph place, I should say.
I think
Dude,
so.
Flame owned it,
yeah.
right?
All those guys. Yeah.
And the barrel at Gravels. And
When I can remember, I used to surf Upper Trestles a lot, and that's where I met guys like Terry Sennett and Terry Martin and those guys.
Yeah.
And but I do remember before there was a left at Lowers. So
I've heard that too.
yeah,
I don't
there was
remember that.
there was a left, and I think it was actually Mike Crickshank, if I'm hearing the story right.
Yeah.
They were photographing the left, which was like a novelty wave, and it got on the cover of Surfing. I think that's how the story goes.
Okay.
And then it became more of a spot. Now it's a spot and it's stuck. But early on, I think there was only a right. I don't think there was a left on.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
that's how old I am.
Yeah. And you've seen it change.
Oh, immensely.
Okay.
Yeah, immensely.
So when did you start surfing contest?
I started surfing contests probably in like junior high school.
Oh, junior. So you're doing it
Yeah.
now. Okay.
So like I played sports. I
Okay.
played soccer. I played baseball. I played volleyball.
Okay.
And my dad was a big basketball player.
Okay.
So there was the mentality of train, work hard, work at it, and then be goal oriented where like there's a competition and you want to go win.
Okay.
And so like playing AYSL soccer, there was, you had your scheduled workouts, you had your scheduled games. There was a season, there was a finale, and surfing was always in between all of those things. And then contests allowed it to be a thing where I could focus more on it. It's what I really wanted to go do.
Yeah.
But when there were contests, it was like my family could understand, oh, well, it's a tournament. There's an objective. You want to go and you try to win. And so I started surfing contests early. And I sucked. I couldn't make it out of a heat forever. And, it took me a while to learn how to surf. I wasn't one of those kids that like picked it up and just automatically did it. Like I couldn't figure it out. And then once I started to figure it out, then I felt like, oh, this is really special.
Yeah.
And I just focused more and more. And, with the surf contest, I started early. I sucked for a long time. And then I figured out how to win. And I through high school, I competed a lot in the WSA. There were all kinds of different organizations. And I learned how to do well. And I did well. And then you got sponsored. Then you got to go travel and
I have a couple questions. I'm going to stop right there.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing, your dad was a very competitive person.
My dad was a very competitive person.
Okay. It sounds like that.
So, and in fact, when I was surfing in contests, he was too. So he was surfing in his age division, and we would go to the events and that.
Oh, so he was surfing.
Yeah.
He picked up the same time as you?
We learned at the same time. We started competing at the same time. And my dad actually helped run contests around the area with Shane Beshan's dad and Vince De La Pena's dad, the local WSA district.
Okay.
And we got into it.
So that's odd. That's different in the surf world. Maybe not today, but back then. Your dad starting so late in life.
Yeah.
And being accepted into the
it wasn't that thing of even being accepted. Like he made through some heats. I think he made a final here
amazing.
and there, and
that's amazing, really.
Yeah, and he's a natural athlete, and that's what he applied himself to.
Yeah.
But he didn't have what we have, a history of surf culture and surfing as a lifestyle. It was more something he picked up like a sport and learned how to do it and became proficient, and would watch other people, and we would watch other people and learn and grow and refine it, and it was Yeah, it was a case study because he had no background other than as an early kid, he learned to body surf. So he knew how to read waves.
He knew the
and
ocean.
Be comfortable in the ocean.
Yeah.
So
That's huge. That's a big thing.
Oh, it's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So he could read a wave and know where to go. And like, so he naturally got that. It wasn't like he came from no water experience. He was in the water, even in Italy as a little kid, swimming and being a part of, the sea and all that.
What's your dad's name?
Mike DeNicola.
What's his middle name?
Gaetano.
That's Italian.
His full name is Michael Gaetano Antonio DeNicola. So
that's right.
We got some Italian roots there.
Okay, so to add on to that question, did that make you competitive? Did you have to be competitive? Did he instill that in you, or did you come naturally?
I think there was a bit of both.
Okay.
I learned that if you won, you were rewarded.
Okay.
If you did not, it felt like there was some kind of failure. So there was always a thing of wanting to win and wanting to like be recognized and wanting to like feel confident in what I was doing. And that was confidence. If I went out and surfed well, I might feel good about it. But if you came back with a prize or a trophy, then it was like an acknowledgement of saying, yeah, like you did that and you did that well.
Did that matter to you in your eyes, or did you want other people to see it? Did you want to show people?
I think it was a bit of both. I think I was always...
You're like bragging, like, dude, look what I got.
No, I
got a trophy.
think, if anything...
Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. And I think personally, it was almost coming from a place of being super insecure. And that like, I was inland, so I wasn't the local guy at the beach.
I get that.
But if I went and I won, then I was good enough to maybe go like hang out.
You beat the guys that live on the beach. Yeah.
And so it was really a lot of what's driven me is like those fears or insecurities and trying to overcome them. And then when good things would happen, that also feels good. But
to be accepted?
Yeah, to be accepted.
Yeah.
And one thing about surfing contests is I've learned that you lose way more than you win.
Yeah.
So if you keep at it, you learn a lot of lessons along the way. And I think the most valuable ones are usually when you lose.
Okay.
You know, if you can look at them and figure them out, you can learn a lot about yourself. But a lot of that kind of perspective came much later in life. I'm 55 now, and we're talking back to when I learned to surf when I was 12.
Right.
So I surfed in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010, and now in the 20s.
Yep.
So I've been around a while. Yeah. And surfing is a young sport. It's a new sport. You know, the founders of the sport of pro surfing are people that I know.
Yeah.
You know, so it's in its infancy, you know, in some regards. And
right.
It's learning and growing and becoming, you know, new things for more people.
Okay.
But yeah, I have a long history in being super passionate about it.
Okay. Okay. So now you're getting into high school, you're still surfing contests, and how are you doing then?
You know, by the time I was in high school, I was learning to win on like a local level.
Yep.
And a funny story or a story that remains with me. I was a junior in high school, and around that time, the cool thing was to be rebellious. You know, it was a rebellious era. You think of like the gotcha ads and those crews and all that. My dad, however, was very strict.
Okay.
And my only way to have freedom to go play was if I got my shit done, and my shit meaning like my schoolwork.
Yeah.
So I had to get good grades.
Wow.
So not only was I like on the honor roll, which freed me up to go, you know, if I got my work done, then I could go play.
Yeah.
So not only did I do that, but learning like to be at Salt Creek and seeing all the pros come down and do that, I learned early on that if you excel and you work hard, that gives you certain freedoms. And one of the little tricks I played was I became junior class president. Okay, which is totally counter to the like surf culture thing.
Right.
However, as class president, I could write my own passes. So when the waves were good, I could keep surfing at Salt Creek when all the pros and everybody came down and write my own note to get back into class.
Oh, that's rad.
And like nobody could say like they say, oh, okay, Mike, you're cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's right.
So it was weird. I learned early on that if you excel in other things, it opens up doors on other frontiers.
Right.
And I had the same like mentality when I started working with sponsors or the high school surf coach was a guy named Bob Neely, and he started a brand called Surf More Products. You might remember the leashes and
I know the name, yeah, for sure.
yeah. And so old school San Clemente guy.
Yep.
So he was our history teacher, but he was the surf coach.
Cool.
And my junior year, I was surfing and competing, and I was also I was like the coach's assistant. So I did all the stats for all the contests for all the surfers, and they did this thing where they would take every heat you surfed in, and if you won, you got so many points.
Right.
First through sixth, you amassed amount of points, and those points went for your team. So at the end of the year, you surfed in all these contests, and then there was a grand finale, the league championships. It was like the big deal. And we surfed our heats all year long, and then one of the guys from our school, a guy named Perry Faunus, won the league championship.
Oh, sick.
An inlander guy from Capo Valley High School won.
Yeah.
Beat San Clemente, Dana Hills.
Wow.
Like where there's gnarly, super incredibly talented people.
Yeah.
When came day for the end of year banquet.
Yep.
Bob Neely was good friends with Sean Thompson, who was my hero.
Everyone's hero.
Growing up.
Yeah,
like
for
he
sure.
was the man, like in every way, shape, form. Like Sean was the man.
Yeah.
So he showed up, and I got to meet Sean Thompson. As we were going through the stats for the year for him to give out the awards at the banquet, we're backstage going through this stuff. And we tallied up, all the heats of the year, and I had amassed the most points.
Wow.
And so I was sitting there, and I was like, well, by your structure, here's the points. And he goes, but Perry won the contest.
Yeah.
He's like, there's no way he wins. He won the thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I agree, but by your way of looking at it, like on points, I did this.
Yeah.
And so I'm having this contest with Bob, and it was kind of
The night of?
the
happening.
night of.
It's happening.
And Sean Thompson is the third person in this conversation.
Okay.
And I'm like, hey man, I'm just trying to help. Like you asked me how to do these things, and this is how it plays out. And so they gave Perry the MVP and all that, and which he deserved. Like it's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But Sean turned to me and he goes, never give him any reason to doubt you.
Yeah.
And he said that to me.
Yeah.
And it resonates today. And so the next year I went through and I won every heat of every contest. I think I got second in one heat.
Okay.
And I won the league final thing. So there was no reason to doubt it the next year. I was like, okay,
here it is.
And so that was one of those things of just like being in the position because I was working hard and trying to do my best.
Yeah.
And the legend of all legends in my eyes at the time was saying, no, mate, do that.
Yeah.
Give them no reason to doubt it.
Yep.
And so the next year I did that. And so, so I won, and it was like one of those stepping stones where that then opened up more doors, to where people acknowledge you for being able to do that thing and surf well.
Okay.
You get sponsors, and then that leads you further along.
Okay, so we know you did turn pro, but you also went to college. How did that?
I did.
Did you go? What came first, or did they come at the same time?
No, I waited to turn pro until after I graduated from college.
Okay, which is unheard of.
At the time, I was the first person to go and do that. Along the way, I also had a lot of injuries. So I've got a bad knee. I've had my right knee's been worked on 10 times at this point. So I was having those things happen early on. And at the same time, my dad didn't go to college. My mom didn't go to college.
Yeah.
And there was a certain pressure to go do that thing.
You're the guy in the family
Yeah,
to do it.
and originally I thought I was going to go to college on a volleyball scholarship.
Really? So you're still playing volleyball?
Yeah.
You're
so
active.
through high school, I did that, and
And how did you balance everything? Sorry,
I worked really hard, but
That's a
I
lot.
realized that all the training for volleyball made me stronger in the water when I was surfing.
And maybe you long to be in the ocean more?
Yeah.
you're
No, there
craving
was a
it?
thing where it wasn't like my time in the ocean was more valuable.
Yeah.
And I wanted it more.
Yeah.
And also when I got to the beach, I was in much better physical shape.
Yeah.
My legs my legs were strong. All the things from volleyball translated well when I got back into the ocean. So there was a thing in there of surfing is a sport, and you can train and you can work and you can see better results if you're doing those things. And at the time, not many people were doing that. There was more of the rebellious, we're going to party hard and rock up and let it fly.
Yeah.
And that was not tolerated in my family. Like, I did not party. When we were like at San Onofre, at the end of the beach down by Old Mounds was like the Pasquits in the motorhome and the stories. And I would see them through surfing contests, and I knew them from the beach. But my dad was like, "You're not hanging out with them. You're going to school. You are like." It was a very different thing.
Yeah.
And so I was that outsider, like going to school, getting the grades, playing sports, but then learned how to excel in the water. And at some point, that became the focus. So by the time I went to college, all the other sports were out, and I was focused 100% on surfing and on surviving college. I'm not the smartest guy. I had to work pretty damn hard to get grades to get out of college in 4 years. It took a lot of time and effort.
Did you surf during college in contest?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Nonstop.
So how'd that go?
I surfed
You kind of told me earlier.
Basically every weekend somewhere I was in a contest.
Okay.
All the amateur contests. Then I started surfing in the PSAAs as an amateur.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there though. My exact question is, you went to UCSD.
I went to USD.
Oh, you went to USD. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, a fun story. When I was telling you when I went to USD.
Yep.
The NSSA had a collegiate surf thing going on.
That's what I want to hear.
And at the time, USD did not have a surf team.
Right.
So I went down. I was living in Mission Beach, and I could surf pretty well. And so I got to know the local guys and all that. And a lot of the people down there were going to San Diego State and UCSD.
Yeah.
Some of the guys from San Diego State realized that there was a bylaw in the NSSA rules that if your school did not have a team, but you were within a certain mile radius of another college, you could go surf for the other college.
Yeah.
So I surfed that season for San Diego State University. And the very first contest I went to, I won.
Wow.
And so
they're stoked.
They were stoked. And I got stoked. And so I was going to USD, but I got a hall pass to like all the frat parties because all the surfers were in all the fraternities.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I had access to go to all these other places and have a good time.
Yeah.
So I went to one school, surfed for another school, and I think that year we won the national championships.
Okay.
And so the year after that, then USD had a team. And then so throughout college, I surfed in all the amateur organizations.
Okay.
WSA, I surfed some of the NSSA. I was on the West Coast All-Star team, so we started traveling to the East Coast and Hawaii.
Wow.
And surfing with and like hosting up with the kids from all these different areas.
Okay.
So
one question. You said it was a very strict house, no partying, none of that.
Yeah.
Now you go to college. Are you partying now, or how are you treating life? Now that your freedoms are there, kind of.
You know what? I think there was freedom, and on the scale of partying, I was pretty darn low. I went to a Catholic university.
Yes.
It wasn't a party school. And one of the things about that school was you had to maintain your grades to stay in the school.
Okay.
But part of your grades was based on your attendance. So you couldn't not show up.
Yeah.
So I had to like literally schedule to where I was in class on those days, and everything became very regimented.
Okay.
So even when I was traveling to go to contests, I had books. I was in the back of my truck studying. I'd be on an airplane and and preparing, because I knew if I missed so many classes, I would fail. And if I failed, that meant I wasn't on schedule to get out of college. So there was there were a lot of pressures.
Okay.
And so I had fun in college.
Yeah.
But I had a very, very regimented schedule throughout college because I wanted to pursue surfing. That's where my mind was, but I had to do the school.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
all right. So now you're traveling.
Yeah.
You're on the West Coast team.
Did that. I surfed with the U.S. team. So we went to Venezuela, and we would surf in like the Caton contests and do that. And I was learning to do well and win on that level. Okay. So,
Are you surfing against the guys you were looking up to? Like some of the mag guys and so forth?
All the mag guys, all of the guys, like being at Salt Creek, my first job was at Infinity Surfboards.
Oh, right. Okay, cool.
And they were also my first sponsor.
Okay.
And at Salt Creek, there were guys like Mike Cruikshank and Kevin Billy and Mike Howard that were like in the magazines, on the covers, in the posters. They were the rock stars, but they were also my mentors. So like Kevin Billy helped show me around on the North Shore of Oahu.
Wow.
Mike Cruikshank was also I think he was a 2-time PSAA champion.
Yeah, he might have been.
Yeah,
ripped. I totally know
ripped.
he is. Yeah.
And so as I was coming up as an amateur, I started surfing the PSAA contest.
Okay.
And then I remember surfing in contests against guys like Mike Cruikshank, and started beating him. And I knew him, and I felt guilty, like I'm not supposed to win.
Yeah.
I remember being in heats with him, and like at that point there was the intensity in heats was such to where you had to kind of go after it. You had to be aggressive and assertive. And I felt really bad, but then all of a sudden, like I knew him and he was a friend, and he would start to encourage me, like, no, go harder, like go.
Oh, cool.
And so, I learned from, the best and then put myself into it and really went after it for a while.
Okay. So in those heats, you knew Mike. Okay.
Yeah.
You knew some of the other guys. Was there, and you had to go hard.
Yeah.
And in the water, how'd that translate on the beach? Was everyone like Mike, or most people were like,
oh no,
I hate you?
No, there was a lot of a lot of friction. There was a lot of like the anger in the water. There's a thing now where the anger in the water stays in the water.
Yeah.
No. Back then, that anger, you rocked up with it. You held it onto it all day long.
Okay.
You had it in the water. And
Okay.
I don't know, you became friends and such, but there was early on, I think, some of that aggressiveness and assertiveness, like guys are pulling leashes and guys,
Wow.
it was all or nothing.
Yeah.
There was that aspect to it.
All right. This is a little footnote. Do you think surfing misses that today?
I think,
Or what are your thoughts on pro surfing today? And then we'll go back to this.
well, my thoughts on pro
'cause we're
surfing
here.
is I am a huge fan.
Okay.
I watch every contest. Like as I've matured and grown, I'm a surf nerd. Like I geek out on surfing.
Got it.
So I'm a fan of the sport of surfing. Are there things that I think could and should be different within that? Yes.
Okay.
And I've done things in my history to try to create those opportunities for surfers out in the world.
Okay.
And so I love what I'm able to watch. I love the performance. I think it will continue to learn as a sport and grow. Mm-hmm. Do I think it's on point and doing the best it can? No. Okay. I think things will change and they need to change.
All right. Now we'll go back to your. All right. Now you're doing PSA. You're doing well.
Yeah. So
You've at this point, have you graduated?
When I graduated from college in 1989.
Okay.
And at that point, I won the collegiate state championship. So I felt like I
Really?
swept that. I was on the U.S. team and I made the grand finals in that.
So who was on the team with you? Do you remember some of the guys?
Oh yeah. Guys like, Taylor Knox and Rob Machado
Yeah.
and Jason Sen and Danny Mojado and like Bill Johnson, like all these guys that are just legends.
Yep.
Hans Hagen.
Yeah.
Like guys that they're phenomenal surfers today. They were then.
Yeah.
And some of them, it's easy to follow guys like Rob and Taylor in their careers. And,
Yeah.
they're
And surfing better than ever.
Yeah, surfing better than ever, and showing that as we grow older, you can grow wiser and you can like still learn and grow and do amazing things. So those guys are all huge inspirations to me.
Cool.
Even to today, back then it was you're competing against them, but like Rob's dad and his uncle were our like coach and like like Shane Beshin's dad helped run contests.
Right.
So like growing up with these guys and seeing their successes, made you proud of them, but then also made it feel very attainable. So I would go off and train hard thinking that I'm going to get my opportunity to shine. Like I was always waiting for that thing, thinking that in the back of my head, I thought, oh, I can still beat him.
Yeah.
Like I had that thing.
Okay.
And so that was part of what drove me, down my path.
Okay. So now, where are you at in your point? And where are you at this point in life? You are being somewhat successful. You're in your early 20s.
Yeah, and starting to make little bits of money from sponsors.
Okay.
Starting to win little bits of money from contests.
Okay.
And some of that stuff I was getting while I was in college.
Yeah.
But if you remained amateur in status, they used to do a thing where you'd put money into a travel fund. And you could use it to travel.
Okay.
The other thing, the side hustle was that if you stayed amateur, you could surf in all these amateur contests.
Yeah.
And so on a weekend, every weekend somewhere there was a contest and they gave out great prizes. So you could go and you could kind of like clean up on some gear. And right below USD was a Nordstrom's. And I could take the gear to Nordstrom's and they would give me cash.
Oh, sick.
So you'd go win some like Oakley glasses or some gear from this brand or the other. Nordstrom's had a policy where they would accept any gear and give you money. So I was always going in saying, oh, this is a late birthday present, or, making up stories. After all, I started to know the girls that ran it, and you go in and cash in. That was the money to work with.
Yeah, have fun with it. Right on.
So that was the side hustle.
All right. So now what's surfing meaning to you? Are you, at what point are you wrapping up the contest or I don't know, what's next in your life?
I chased the contest thing for quite a while.
Okay.
Off and on, like more focused than other. Home base was in Mission Viejo for a while after college.
Yep. And
competed and traveled, went to Australia and did the leg of events over there and would go to Hawaii and do those things. And
this is ASP or what is this?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess it was ASP back then.
Yep.
And and getting, different kinds of sponsors. Like I was sponsored by Burn Surfboards out of Australia. So I remember going to Australia with all these fresh boards I had never ridden.
Yeah.
But it was like Tom Carroll, Robbie Page, like these legends. And I felt like, okay, I'm on a career path here. Like these are the guys. And now I'm on the team. The boards were totally different than anything I was used to. And it was like, I rocked up thinking I was something, or that I was going to go do things that like it took me a while to figure out how to do. So there was a lot of things that seem obvious now, but the learning curve, there were a lot of lessons that I learned along the way.
Okay.
I worked with a guy named Brian Clark, BC Surfboards out of San Clemente.
For sure.
And he snatched me away from Infinity Surfboards.
Okay.
He's like, he made me a board. He's like, I've watched you surf. Here's this board. I think it'll work for you. I'm like, well, I surf for these guys and I have a job and like, I'm like, well, okay, I'll go try it.
Yeah.
And the thing fucking worked insane. Wow. And I was like, well, I have a job and I'm like, and they're doing this stuff. And so Brian goes, well, I'll give you a job at my shop and I'll pay your contest entry fees. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to drive to San Clemente to go to work. All right. And I'm surfing on your board. So I surfed on his boards for years and he was a shaper that I really connected with.
Okay.
And at one point he decided to pick up and move from San Clemente to New Zealand. So he was no longer going to be making my boards. And that was the same time when Byrne, who opened up a shop down in Mission Beach, came along and said, well, we want to sponsor you. So we'll pay you and give you boards. And so I started getting all the Byrne surfboards. So there was it seemed like a timely transition, but it took me a while to figure out how to ride the boards and get them to where they were something that I could ride.
Right. So how was the breakup with Infinity? How'd that go?
They were cool.
They were?
They were,
cool.
You know what? They were like family.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It was my first job. Steve and Barry Bainey, they're legends. Infinity Surfboards is incredible. And and that came right around the time when I was going off to college in San Diego.
Right.
So there was a transition where I wasn't going to be working there anymore. Yeah. The other boards worked. It was closer to San Diego, and it just seemed like a transition that made sense. And bottom line was the boards worked. There was something that Brian was doing that he was making boards that I liked more than the boards that Terry Sennett was making for me. And that's when guys like Pat O'Connell and those guys were coming along, and they ride very different kinds of boards than what I was able to ride. Mm-hmm. So the focus on certain kinds of waves and the surfing they were doing was one thing, and I was surfing in other kinds of waves and going in another direction. Yeah. So it just seemed to fit. Okay. So it was.
So they're cool about it. That's nice.
It seemed like it was all cool. Yeah. It seemed like it then. And
I had to ask.
I still see Steve down like at San Onofre, and those guys are awesome.
Right on. So this is growing. This is the growing part.
Growing. Yeah. And making those choices and decisions. Okay. And some of them work. Like that one worked. the one with the other surfboards from Shapers that I'd never met, and just like, here, ride this.
Right.
They look great. They had the cool logos.
Yeah.
But
It's not
it was so
everything.
different.
Yeah.
And it was, that was part of my learning.
So do you have a memorable heat with someone you beat or someone, some kind of heat story? Do you have any?
Man, if we were to dive down those frontiers, there's a lot of those.
Do you have one favorite one? Someone you beat, like a Sean Thompson, or I don't know. Like,
Now, I surfed in a lot of contests.
Yeah.
There were a lot of losses and a few wins here and there.
Okay.
But I remember, like, maybe more than heats was insights into people.
okay.
Like the way their tactics or the way that they approach things. Or I remember surfing. I had a number of back heats with Kelly Slater at the U.S. Championships in Hawaii.
All right.
We were at Sandy Beach, and I was injured. I'd cracked some ribs, and I couldn't hardly paddle. But I timed it to where if I paddle out and caught a wave at the start of the heat, I could just get her out to so I could just get waves in and get through. And Kelly was, he was the guy coming up, and I felt like I was a wounded bird, and I was trying. And so when we kept getting in the same heats, advancing together, I was like, "Fuck! I gotta surf against Kelly." And I know he's gonna make it.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything, but Kelly started to protest because mathematically it was inaccurate that we should keep going
Right,
into
yeah,
the
he's
same
supposed to
heats.
split,
You
yeah.
should be going off into other ones.
Right. That's how it goes.
And I was looking at him going, he's going strictly by what's right on how the math works.
Yeah.
Not looking at me as this wounded, easy prey.
Yeah.
And I was like,
So do you feel like he was threatened by you, maybe?
no, not at all.
No.
No,
Okay.
I don't think that was it. I mean, I
He
guess,
was just doing
I
how's
guess
the
in
rules.
hindsight, I'd like to think that, but I
Yeah.
don't think that was reality.
Yeah.
I think it was more that he was, looking at the numbers and the way things work, and he was like, "Well, you guys are wrong."
Yeah.
And
No, for sure.
whereas if he wouldn't have said anything, I was probably the easy prey.
Yeah.
So little things like that, where I was like, "Oh wow, his head's really in some interesting spaces and how to play the game and how to win and what the numbers meant and where
Okay.
and all that stuff."
Do you think that's why he's where he is today?
For a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, he's a rare specimen, as we all know. And he's
for sure.
I can't say anything more about him. Has already been said a million times.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
But but to this day remains a huge inspiration. Mm-hmm. I love to surf. I base a lot of my life around surfing and the ocean and being prepared to go have fun and trying to be on it when there's waves and to be in good enough shape and tuned in with equipment to go out and still push myself
All right.
and learn and grow and try new things.
Okay.
So it's still I'm 55 and that's still a big inspiration in my life. Those are seeds that were planted early and they've branched off into all these different things. But at the core of myself, that's what helps keep me sane, healthy, and vital in the world.
Okay. So at what point? So you're an artist too,
Yes.
big time artist.
Yes.
At what point?
Big
does
time,
art,
I don't know, but yeah.
in my eyes, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think you're
I make my living as
an artist. Okay. So at what point? I think I read somewhere that you did art on your boards back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that so? Where did art start for you?
Art started early on, early elementary school.
Okay.
I was always...
So before surfing, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always drawing, always doodling, always crafting, always making things. My grandmother was a 3rd and 4th grade school teacher, and a lot of her work was arts and crafts. So whether it's paper mache or painting or drawing or doing different creative projects, I grew up doing those kinds of things. From junior high through high school through college, we always had a darkroom in the house. My dad was into photography.
Oh, wow.
So I was always taking photos and creating things. Mm-hmm. So growing up where I did in the household, we were always presents for people were always things that you made. It was always an expression of love, but you were always making something unique and original. And that was how I was raised. That's what we did. And then when you merge that with being in the area around where the surf industry really spawned and seeing brands and people like Michael Thompson and Gotcha, or you talk with Peter Schroff, and those designs, and you see how a brand is an extension of an idea, and there's a lot of creativity in it. Something became very natural about painting on the surfboards for myself, but to create my own identity. So it was my look and my feel and my thing. And I saw it in the other surfers too. If you think back to the Echo Beach era, there was a look and a feel, right, that defined that. And Peter Schroff and like some of those people in those era was a tangible thing. There were certain other surfers, like there was a guy named Pat Allen, a goofy footer that used to surf the point at Salt Creek, and he had Bugs Bunny on his surfboards that Bill Stewart would airbrush.
Yeah, okay,
so
right.
like there were these airbrushes and these things that had a look and a feel to the surfer. And part of the identity, just like the logos on your board were from a brand, but that brand had a family and a look and a feel. And you had your little like clubs, but then your little like clubs within the clubs, and so painting on the boards, with Brian Clark, we like painted and created designs. We created a logo for the Mike DeNicola Pro Series. So early on, I got it in my head that the concept of brands and look and feel and identity, like that was all around me. All those brands and the magazines and the way they were portrayed and the looks of the images in the magazines with, you saw the guys with the sprays on the boards and those got the color and the pop. It was just in the vernacular of surfing. So those seeds got planted very early. And I was always drawing and painting and doing that stuff. And as I started to travel, I was always taking photos of everywhere I went and bringing that kind of stuff back. And they all started to kind of merge together. Okay. So, I was surfing contests, off and on all through the 90s. And by I moved to LA in the early 90s. Okay. My grandma and grandpa got a house in the early 60s that overlooked the point at Topanga and what used to be called the Chart House. Now there's a Masters there. Okay. And so my whole life, there was a house on the hill that looked at a perfect right-hand point break. Wow. And so when I left Orange County and the pro surf thing, at that point, there was a shift in the industry where there weren't as many events. The money that was flowing tightened up. There was change going on, and at the time I didn't really understand the business of surfing. I just realized that I couldn't go out and win money those opportunities weren't there. And I wasn't getting paid to go travel to do the events that I wanted to do. So I kind of turned my back on the surf industry completely and moved to LA and just surfed and traveled. And then when events would come around, I'd go compete in them. But really stepped away from sponsorships and a lot of that kind of stuff and went and just started riding different boards and just surfing for other reasons.
So you moved to Topanga. Yep. You've done the contest scene. You kind of walked away from the industry.
I kept going back. I still wanted to do it. But the opportunities weren't there. Well, so I would always go back and try to get better surfboards. So I got some really great boards from a guy named Mike Estrada from a while, and from John Carper, JC Surfboards out of Hawaii. And so and Dev Gregory, who is a guy that shapes for Lost. So always getting good boards and wanting to push myself, but I didn't have the opportunities to go out and do the events and be in the spotlight. I just kind of, like I said before, I always felt like I was an outsider. And so I posted up and surfed a lot of Topanga, surfed a lot of Malibu and those spots, and just surfed hard and wanted to beat anybody I could see in the water. It was, there was still that fire, but there wasn't an outlet in competitive surfing.
Okay. All right. So what are you doing for a living since you're not
I wasn't doing that anymore? I started taking any job I could within film and TV industry. So I started doing extra work. started doing stand-in work. I started working in the art department. So I worked as a production assistant, in an AD, a location scout. I started doing all these jobs to learn how film and TV and those things were made. There was this side where I was a competitive guy, and I worked hard, trained hard, but I also would break down. I had a lot of injuries, so I had a lot of proactive time out and then a lot of recovery time because I was injured. And during those times, it was, dive into the creative things, watch a lot of TV, watch a lot of film. And as I moved to LA and I'm around people that worked in that industry, started taking any job I could to pay the bills, but also figure out how that stuff got made. At that point, there was no surfing on TV. There was like the prime time, or the, I'm saying that wrong. There was the Bud Pro Tour.
Yeah, the Prime TV maybe?
Prime Ticket, I think
Prime Ticket, yeah.
With
before Fox.
With PT.
It turned into Fox.
Yeah. And those things. And I never felt that that content did surfing or the surfers justice.
Yeah.
They were, I came up with all the reasons why I thought they sucked. And so I created something different of what, as a surfer, I would allow you to go showcase what you could do. And as an audience, you could really get insight into what it was. So as I'm working in the industry to pay bills, a lot of, for me, the roles that the capacity I was working on, there was a lot of downtime. So I'd sit for, it wasn't uncommon to do 14, 16, 18-hour days. So your time on set, there's a lot of sitting around. So I'd have all the surf magazines, and I'd have all the art books, and I would just digest everything I could. And I watched what everybody did in their roles and how a crew can bring a property to life and tell a story that was compelling that other people could watch. So I learned how crews worked. I did all the jobs in the crews until I was able to get my own ideas made. So that's where I went back to surfing and came up with concepts that I then got made to provide opportunities for surfers and create content that I thought that surfers and fans of surfing would want to see.
Okay.
And so, so I started doing that.
What are those?
I created a game that I call the 5x.
Right. Okay.
So if you look at pro surfing right now, the goal is fewer people, more time, and good waves.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I came out of an era where the goal was over a weekend, you would have hundreds of people and you would declare a winner at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so they ran that formula. It could be shitty waves and you would have
most of the time
fights.
Shitty waves.
Well, I mean, when there's a contest a weekend, if you look at what the Pro Tour was, there were like 50 events in a year. You know, it was nuts.
Huntington's good till 10.
Yeah. and it served a purpose, right? But it didn't allow surfers to showcase what they were capable of. And it didn't give the audience a chance to see to inform them of what good surfing was and why. And so I created a formula. I call it the 5x.
Yep.
And 5 people would each throw in $5. They'd go out and surf a 90-minute session. We'd pick the session and the spot when the waves would be good. We'd film it. Those same 5 guys would come back in. We'd play the footage back for them to score and critique each other. We'd film them as they're talking about it. So guys are giving each other shit. Guys are giving each other props. They're putting out what was good and bad and why. Then they would declare their own winner. So the same surfers that were in the water would score themselves and each other on turns, airs, tubes, combos, and innovation.
Perfect.
The winner would take the pool, $25 in the bragging rights.
And they're having fun.
They're having fun. Yeah. But what it would do is it would push the level.
Yeah.
If you have an hour and a half in good waves and you see somebody do something, you have every opportunity to up the ante until it's not being, you learn what's possible.
Yeah.
See, so in the 90s, I watched every surf film that came out. And you think of all the Taylor Steele films and all that. It came broken down into segments. Guys that have their parts from all their travels from like the last year. And here are the highlights.
Yeah.
I love seeing it. You could see the level of what they got to. But it wasn't based in reality in that those guys aren't at the same spot on the same day and who's doing better.
Right.
So,
I mean, you go back to Blazing Boards.
Yes.
Those guys are getting 3 or 4 waves.
Yep.
But that's over a year.
Yeah.
So they're picking the very best.
So if you take it, granted, this is right when reality TV was actually becoming a thing.
Okay.
So back then we didn't have cell phones. There was no reality TV.
No.
But the reality of going to a beach, like all the contests that I couldn't surf in because I was injured,
Yeah.
or even when I would lose, I would sit around and watch. And especially like in Huntington Beach, which is close by.
Yeah.
You'd sit there, you'd watch the heats, and you look just down the beach, and you're watching the good surfing going on just down the beach.
Yeah.
Those guys are flaring up. Those guys are like landing the thing that make you go, whoa, not surfing to the criteria in the heats.
Right.
So I realized if you gave people more time and you made the criteria something that you could objectively say, that's a turn, and you're trying to do the sickest turn. You're trying to do the biggest air. You're trying to do these things. When you're out comparing apples and apples and oranges to oranges, you can learn a lot and elevate the level.
Okay.
So I started running 5-bys.
Yep.
I started doing that. And I started running them like all over the world. I would tag along on trips with sponsors and their athletes, and we'd run them.
Oh, right.
Like I did one over on Maui with Dustin Barca and Josh Slay, Goose, Ola and Benel Eliogram, out in Hana at a beach break that like guys aren't allowed to go surf. And we went and we ran one because they were like the boys. And this is like around 2000.
Okay.
And those guys were already trying flips. Those guys are already like, the locals came out and watched, and they're like, we've never seen them surf like this. The level, when you're pushing the level, it's like, you go until you break or you land something.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
Okay.
And so I started running those. Red Bull got behind me.
Okay.
And we started making TV episodes out of them. We did tours. We started taking it into tow-ins, tow-ats, translate it into skateboarding and snowboarding and wakeboarding,
So
and running these things to where you could really take something that you love, which is for me was surfing, and dissect it, then go and really try to learn and build on those building blocks, but open the dialogue. Like,
all right,
these are the best guys, and this is what they're trying to do.
Okay. So that was cool. I watched some of the episodes.
Well, and the one that you didn't see, because you saw some of the episodes, and the last one that we did was a boat trip to Fiji with Andy and Bruce Irons, Mick Fanny and Jamie O'Brien, so Alex Gray. Like
the guys.
The guys.
Yeah.
And to see them go at it, and like you really saw what was capable, and so that's where that project and
they all kind of surf differently too.
Well, they all surf differently, and it's neat when you give people time to go out and not be burdened by trying to get a score in a certain amount of time, but to go out and you could win one of these 5-bys on one wave.
Yeah.
Like,
okay. Yeah.
It's masterful play.
Yeah.
You could go out and huck 100 airs and stick that one. It's going to count.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's strategy in that game.
Yeah.
Right. But the level was, just a whole other level.
And there's no one around, so they're really performing for their peers.
Yeah.
And
for themselves.
Yeah.
Yep. And no one, that's one of the things that was fun about taking the prize money out of it. It's a bro down.
Yeah. Like
5.
It's a pride kind of.
I got 5 on it.
Yeah.
It's like you throw it in, like, I don't want you to take my money.
Yeah.
I want to take your money.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fun, but we're going to push each other. And let's see how it goes. And so I started running those back around 2000. The first one I ever ran was on September 11th at Topanga.
Oh, okay.
Jesse Billauer, there was a benefit for him on the day the Twin Towers went down. And all the pros were in town for that. I'd already been pitching the idea to Chris Morrow at Surfer Magazine and we showed up that day, and it wasn't a day to compete.
It was
It was a day to celebrate being able to go surf. And we put a twist on it, and we started talking about 5-by and why we surf and these things. And again, the level went through the roof, and we filmed those, and Taj Burrow really stood out, and he was doing things that were way beyond, other surfers.
Wow.
And so, a lot of the top guys of the time, the Malloys, all those guys were there. And But we filmed it, and I realized that I was on to something that I wanted to pursue. So I pushed that and did that run with the 5x for about 5 years with Red Bull.
Right on. And can you find all the old episodes on?
They're hard to find. You can see some on the website, but I'm working now to relaunch that property.
Yeah, that's for sure. That footage has got to be available to us.
Back then,
some way or another,
it was cumbersome to go film at the beach and do these things. Now with cell phones, we didn't have social media.
No.
We had to go physically edit everything to present it back. Now you can do it on an app.
Yeah.
So I'm actively working now to relaunch that project for kids today, to where anywhere, anytime, a kid can show what they're capable of, learn, share, and compare.
Okay.
So that's the goal on that project.
All right. So then when do you start doing your art, your I don't know, your paintings, or how do you describe your art?
Well,
film is art.
Yeah,
all that's all art.
There's a lot of
different kinds of art. Yeah.
People sing, people dance, people make film. There's surfing is an art form. It can be it can be a sport. It's an art.
Which is funny for you to say, because people would say, me in particular, when you're competing, that kind of takes away from the art.
100%.
So you're kind of living on both lives.
Well, here's the thing. I polar opposites.
Yeah.
I came through the time of hating surfing. Excel. I couldn't be validated by winning.
Yeah.
Like my opportunity to do that went away.
Okay.
And so there was a time where I started to travel to places where I couldn't surf. And that made me realize how much I loved it and missed it and wanted it.
Yeah.
And I started traveling to places where I could just really dig in and surf great waves and explore cultures and do that thing. But art, when we look right down that corridor, if you will, or down that path, I was always making things to process my feelings and emotions from a young age. When I moved to LA, I'd been making paintings on my surfboards and drawing and doing these things all along. When I moved to LA and started doing these jobs where I had a lot of downtime, it allowed me to go into art history and explore a lot of the people that inspired me, but also make work. So I was always drawing and sketching and doing these things on sets. And that's a creative environment as well.
Right.
So through the 90s, I was painting a ton, but I was never showing anything. Like they were all for myself to process my life and me to make sense of the things that I was going through.
And what does that mean? Does that mean you're enjoying doing it? Or is it like an outlet?
Sometimes it's almost more like therapy.
Okay, that's what
like if you get into self-help and self-healing and those things of trying to figure out why you do what you do and understand it and move through it and purge it. A lot of that, I make sense of things with shape and color, with rhythm and pattern and form and things that I observe in nature. Think of rhythms and patterns of, choppy ocean versus clean, long lines and how they wrap around the reef.
Yeah.
You start to see patterns in nature and the way that where the land meets the sea, the different patterns in the rocks and those formations that create the waves to break the way they do in the reefs. And so being very observant and photographing these things, those would be the things that I would start to mimic with the patterns I started to see in my own life, in my own tendencies, and the way I move through the world. And so as I was finding my own footing as an artist, I was making a lot of work, but not showing it. Like I didn't.
Right.
They were just.
So where were they sitting? In the garage at your grandma's?
Literally in. I was renting a room from my grandma, and literally every wall was like 3, 4, 5 deep of canvases. Like my space.
Were you
kept
putting
getting
it up
smaller.
on the wall?
I'd put them on the wall.
Cool.
And then they were stacked.
Yeah.
My living space kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller because I just kept painting.
Yeah.
And so my mom and dad took some work and put them. This is in the late 90s. In a show in Huntington Beach called the Surf City USA Art Festival.
Sweet.
They put a couple paintings in it.
With your knowledge or without your knowledge?
Well, they told me about it. I was really reluctant. I was kind of convinced that I wasn't going to show up.
Why?
Because insecurity and feeling like I didn't belong and that I wasn't good enough. And that like what I was doing and painting wasn't I'm not mimicking anybody else. I'm drawing from other inspirations, but I'm just letting it fly. I'm not painting towards trying to sell it or trying to show it. It was for I'm inspired by other people and what they do, but I was doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And so I felt, everybody's going to think I suck, and this is scary.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Super scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
And let alone have it at an event where there's an opening where all the artists show up and the patrons and the people and the thing. I was like, okay, this is scary. Like, I was convinced that I wasn't going to show up. I was going to have an excuse to like not go.
Yeah.
That was more the way I am.
Okay.
And reluctantly, I showed up. I kind of had my head down and I was walking around this space. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw like a corner of one of my paintings. So I like gravitated over and had a big blue ribbon on it. It
wow.
won first prize in this mixed media thing.
Okay, cool.
And it was like, I got validated. And so not that art is a competition, but it allowed me to believe that what I was doing was being accepted. And they liked the fact that I was exploring. I was doing my own thing and going down a path that other people weren't doing at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that gave me a certain amount of validation to keep doing my thing, keep exploring and learning and growing on my own terms.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you're at your first event in Huntington Beach, right? Mm-hmm. And there's other artists there. Are you starting to mingle with them? Are you talking to these people, these other artists?
A little bit.
And what are you hearing, or what are you saying to them? Are you looking at their art too, and are you comparing yourself? Like,
well, I was looking at their work in awe.
Okay.
Of all the things that their work was that mine wasn't.
Okay.
And learning and like seeing from what they're doing, and I could really appreciate the skill that they have to do that.
Yeah.
However, that wasn't anything that I wanted to do. So again, I felt like I'm an outsider. I'm doing something different, but they allowed me in the room, and some of the people liked what I was doing. Oh, it's not for everybody, but some people wanted to encourage me to keep doing what I'm doing.
Cool.
And so met a lot of people, and like it freed me up to meet those people that I thought, since I didn't paint like them, I didn't go through the art school route to get where they are. And like, I felt like I was a fraud. I felt like I was intimidated. And I learned, over the years that, we all bring something to the table. And it's my job to keep exploring down my path.
Okay.
But from that show, there's a company based out of Seal Beach called the Olson Company. And my dad was working there at the time. And the owner of the company, a guy named Steve Olson, heard that I had work in there and wanted to see they build homes, and wanted to know if I had any other work. And I showed him these sketches that I'd made from downtown LA. They were abstract paintings of the skyline of all the buildings. Okay. And he bought 3 paintings.
So sweet.
And I was like, oh, wow. I'm like, that's all right. Like, wow, I can... people might actually buy my work. And we talked a little longer, and he said, we're our business is booming, and we're expanding to this new like 10,000 square foot space in Seal Beach. And he's like, do you have any more work? I thought, well, yeah. And meanwhile, back at where I live, I'm like 3, 4, 5 deep on every wall with all this paint. So I rented a U-Haul trailer, and I loaded up all my work. Okay. And I took it down, and I spread out like over 50 paintings around this huge space, and basically put on a show for them. And I became the artist for the Olson Company.
Oh, sweet.
And so they started installing my work throughout their buildings, which were then in Seal Beach, but then they opened up in San Francisco. Wow. They opened up in San Diego. They opened up in Oxnard. Wow. And I started selling work, but realizing that these things that were very personal to me, that I'm telling these stories and figuring out my life, other people would resonate with them too, and they liked being in that environment of them. I usually paint with a lot of color and rhythm and pattern that has a lot of energy. So especially in a work environment that creates a positive energy,
That makes
it
sense.
changes
Actually.
people's moods.
Yeah.
It makes them happier.
That's what I'm picturing in my head.
And so then, like another company came to me called Balboa Capital. They're down by the airport in Orange County, and then they bought a huge body of work and installed through their business. And so I started painting on my own for myself, and then finding that at some point they're going to have a home. They're going to find a home. And so I started showing more in galleries and in little group shows, and living in near Topanga in the Pacific Palisades. You're real close to Santa Monica and Venice in that area. So I started showing all around Santa Monica and Venice and those areas. And
what do you mean by showing?
Showing in galleries.
Okay, in galleries.
And
That's what I want to know.
different art shows.
Yeah.
So there would be group shows where you have a bunch of artists and you bring a painting.
Okay.
And then you'd have smaller shows where people bring more work.
Okay.
And then you have your own show where you have nothing but your own work. And so,
which is how's that?
It's a different beast. And it takes a lot more work. You have a lot more writing. It just becomes something else.
So I like your art, and that's kind of how I found you. I think it's cool. For me, I can't describe it. I'm not an artsy guy, but I mean, dude, I love your stuff.
Thank you.
Now you're making money off your art.
Yes.
You're working with some big companies that are buying your art.
Well, not only companies, but then I'm showing in bigger galleries and in museums.
You're kind of in LA. You're in the hub of the art.
Yeah. And so my studio now, fast forward, I was living at the beach at Topanga. 7 years ago, I picked up and moved that space, and I was renting garages to store work, and I moved it all to downtown LA, in the heart of downtown LA.
Yeah. Mentally, how does that change for you to do your art? Does it put pressure on you, or do you understand my question?
Well, there's always going to be
you were
pressure.
doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
And there could there be pressure when you're doing it for yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, a lot of me, the pressure is that I don't always know what I'm doing.
Okay.
And so, like, when you look at the work, it's all very layered. So
that's true.
I paint.
I see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Think about your different moods.
Okay.
When you're like different moods,
it's tricky.
You react differently.
Yeah.
And if you're physically and emotionally available to move through that in process, some things will be radical. Some things will be calm. Some things are very methodical. Some things, just like Mother Nature moves through its moods of rhythms and patterns, we work the same way.
Okay.
And so in that, sometimes I'll be working through things in my own life, frustrations and things where I'm working through them in color. I don't really know where they're headed, but I'm expressing them. I'm getting them out, which is a healthy thing.
Okay.
So some of those paintings, I don't know where they're headed until there's like an aha moment where you're like, okay, I get where this is going.
Okay.
So some of that formula is you find along the way.
Okay. So I'll go back to the original question. You answered that great. My original question is, now you're trying, before it was for you.
Yes.
And I know you explained it, but
it's still for me.
It's still for you. Okay.
It's still for me. However,
but now you have to produce. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What I'm saying?
And
I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just asking. I'm curious.
Please do, because it forces me to answer it, which is good for me to learn too, because I feel like it's my role as an artist to communicate with people out in the world. And I want to reach as many people as I possibly can, and I want to affect them in a positive way.
Okay.
And my ability to do that is to bring my own life and my own experiences, good, bad, ugly.
Okay.
Let it fly. Bring that to life in a way that's digestible for other people, so that it can hopefully serve something in them to make them feel better or learn something or inspire them to go be the best that they can be.
Okay.
So, I do feel pressure. I have to put in the hours to create the work.
Okay.
I have to constantly be learning and growing and seeing what's out in the world for me to have fresh material. Because when you look around, you see a lot of different things going on. So there's several different things that I do that are like conversations with friends that you continue for years. Like when you see a friend,
like an ongoing painting, or how you explain your
series.
surfboards.
Like the surfboards are a constant thing.
Yeah,
they're evolving, they're changing, they're growing. There's new techniques. Just like when I do these reef paintings. That process is I'm over a decade in of doing those. And I'm constantly learning and growing and finding new locations and techniques and things. There's another channel, which is Sunspots.
Which those are rad.
Thank
I like
you.
those.
So those in themselves are like an old friend that you haven't seen for a while, but when you connect, you catch right back up and then you move forward together. So like right now I'm preparing for a couple of shows, one of which I'll be showing some of the reef paintings.
Okay.
Then we'll talk about that show. And another of which is a new gallery opening up downtown here, which I'm going to be showing some really big work.
Okay.
And some of that's going to be a throwback to nostalgia in Los Angeles and some of my personal history.
Okay. You want to just talk about that right now since you're here?
Sure. There's
so the swing.
Yeah, the Swing Street Gallery.
Yeah.
So Garen and Molly Swing are opening up a gallery on Gallery Row in downtown LA. You think about like the fashion district, the jewelry district, there is an arts district and there's Gallery Row. Right on Gallery Row, there's a building called the Trust Building, which is this huge, just gorgeous building, with like the 20-foot ceilings, all concrete pillars, concrete floors. It had to have been made around like the 1920s, maybe 30s.
Okay.
Old school, like
old architecture.
Yeah,
LA.
like old school, the OG LA.
Sick.
So it's in that space.
Okay.
They're opening up a gallery. In that show, the opening I think there's about like 9 or 10 artists from I think there's artists from all around the world.
Okay.
And all very accomplished in their own rights. Garen is a well-known designer and artist. And his wife Molly is a part of them opening this gallery, and it's in the heart of LA. One of the reasons I moved down to LA and got myself off the beach is that I felt like if I want to speak out in the world through the art world, the channels are much clearer to do it from here. LA, New York, some of the big cities are known for their art scenes,
right?
And what happens there resonates through the art world. In moving down here, I'm much more a part of that world, and my work is being pushed through those channels and walking through those doors.
So does that mean it's more accessible to you, or because you're closer to them? Does that make sense?
Well, in a sense, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm closer to it, but what goes on are more of the higher level galleries
Okay.
that deal more internationally,
Yep.
and with the more famed and accredited artists who have a bigger voice in the world.
Okay.
And so kind of like that thing of like surfing at Salt Creek and wanting to go surf with the pros and then wanting to get in that game.
Makes sense.
I'm kind of following in a similar pattern
For art.
where I'm doing my thing and I'm building on my brand and my work and my thing and putting it down these channels to try to reach further out into the world.
So my question to you now is, this kid just came to me, is you live literally right off the train tracks.
Yeah.
Off the LA River.
Yeah.
7 years ago, or however long ago it was, in Topanga, your head has to be in two different places as you're painting. The environment's completely different.
100%. Different inspiration.
And does that change your art?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wherever I go, it will. Well, where I used to live, we lived on a hillside overlooking the beach. I had a big deck outside to where I could look, hear, smell, and see the waves.
Right.
So all of those rhythms and patterns that were organic in nature affected my work.
Okay.
Here, I'm in the heart of downtown LA. On one side, you mentioned the train tracks.
Yep.
Right next to me is the FedEx Superstation with all the trucks on their routes. On the other side is a cement factory. So it's blue collar, the rhythms and patterns of work, of how LA runs.
Yeah.
It's a different environment that's structured, right? Mm-hmm. As a surfer, we follow organic patterns. It's one thing if you live at the beach and you fit surfing into your schedule of life, family, work, money, all those things. Being downtown, I'm in a different rhythm. So luckily now we have things like Surfline where I'm able to target where and when I want to be to ride waves. I still have my local spots. I still surf Topanga and all through the LA Bay a lot. However, if you look at a map, I'm right off the 5 freeway in the heart of the original part of downtown LA off Main Street, like the original Main Street. It takes about an hour for me to get to Ventura, the same amount of time to get to Trestles.
Yep.
A little bit more than that to get to Rincon, a little bit more than that to get to Oceanside. If I want to go chase big waves, 3 hours I'm in the Central Coast, 3 hours I'm in Ensenada. So I have a greater wingspan to where it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have to drive and I have to navigate traffic patterns. And so I have to plan ahead.
Yeah.
But I can get in and out of here easy and I get better waves being here than when I was living on the beach at Topanga.
More consistent because you're not just surfing Topanga or Malibu.
You know, I've surfed tens of thousands of waves.
Yeah.
They're pretty similar, you know? And so in doing that to keep it fresh, you trade up boards, you try different, you know,
Equipment
but
changes.
You get into a certain rut out of habit.
Does this take you out of your rut?
Yeah.
Okay.
It forces me to explore different spots, and it keeps it more exciting. I'm not in the water as often. Luckily, my fiance lives in Marina del Rey, so
sick.
I go to the beach and can surf down by the Venice Pier, and that's easy. But really, in moving here, it's forced me, if I'm going to drive, I'm going to go drive to where I can get better waves.
Okay.
You know? And so going up and down the coast has become far more relevant, and it makes me more focused. So when I'm here in the studio, I work hard. So I know that when the opportunity, when there's swell, I'm going to try and be on it.
Okay.
And so I try to make that those things a priority that balance themselves out.
Okay. So do you think rougher or not? What's the right word in art? Because you're in this environment.
Raw.
There you
Yeah,
go.
there's a certain rawness to it.
Yeah.
And if I look out
I mean, it's raw in the ocean too, but it's a different kind of raw.
Think of it this way too. When I look out the window when those freight trains were just going by, you see all the graffiti.
Yeah.
Right. So
More urbanized.
a lot more urban, a lot more different use of materials. Start using a lot more of the spray paints.
Sick.
A lot of
Right.
there's different techniques. Like if
Kind of stokes you're going to describe it again. That's good.
if you think about the purpose and the intention. If somebody's out writing graffiti, they gotta make it happen quick and be in and out. Stealth. Like
True.
There's all kinds of risks.
thought about
So they use different materials, right?
Okay, yeah.
They got to go in and be able to show and express their talents, limited time, in sometimes risky places. So different kinds of spray paints and extinguishers and like use different materials to do their thing. You know, it's interesting because I don't come from the streets and I don't tag in the streets. I prefer to refer to it that I tag waves. So I go out and I do my thing where I have a limited time where I go out to do my thing. But I learn a lot from all the guys around here. So I'm immersed here. I've met a lot of people, know a lot of people, and show work with these people, but we all bring our own thing to the table.
How do you relate to these people, especially some of the urban artists? Do you hang with these guys?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In two different worlds.
Different worlds.
Like you're middle class America, basically. You grew up middle class.
I was born in Pasadena.
Yeah.
You know, my father was an immigrant.
And some of these guys may not have had such a easy. I don't know. That's not easy. You worked hard. You worked hard. I'm not going to say not easy.
I think
they had a different life,
I don't
guess.
have the most. I'm not the most talented individual. I have talents.
Yes, you have to work hard.
But I have a good work ethic.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, people can respect the fact that I work hard.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I bring is there's an authenticity to acknowledging what happens in nature, right? And you think about the ocean always wins. So no matter how badass you think you are, you're always humble.
Yeah.
Right? That translates really well through these different genres, categories of people. I don't want to say categories of people, but people who their work falls into different categories.
Okay.
Right? There's a thing about respect and humility. Just like if you're a tourist coming to a highly localized spot, you mind your P's and Q's.
Yeah.
And over time, you'll build respect.
Sure.
It's like that in anything.
Yeah.
I found it to be like that in the art world. I do my thing, and over time, we'll see how well I'm accepted.
And then you have another event during the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
about that
So
too?
a while back, a guy named Rob Havasey did a book called Surf Story, and then Surf Story 2. See, I'm pulling up his Instagram right now. You can follow Rob Havasey.
Okay.
And he's pulled together a group of the artists from this book called Surf Story. And on Sunday, let's see.
I think it's like August 7th or something.
Yeah, on the Sunday, the finals of the U.S. Open, right across the street, there's the Pacific, I think it's the Pacific Gallery. I'm looking for it right now.
Okay.
With all kinds of incredible artists. Rob is a fantastic, he's a great artist. Guys like Andy Moses, guys like Taz, Jim Evans,
Okay.
Chris Peterson, Charlie Klingman. Like, there's a laundry list of incredible artists.
Yeah.
Joshua Paskowitz.
Okay.
Yeah, all kinds of incredibly talented people that come from the surf art world, like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
merging of that. And a lot of them are in these books. There's a show there. And I'll post it on my Instagram. I'll post it on yours. And Rob Havasey is the one.
We can put it
this
on the show notes too.
And so that's Sunday the 7th, right after the end of the U.S. Open.
Yep.
This show's from 6 to 9, right across the street in the I guess called the Pacific.
There's Pacific City.
It's in that. It's called the Pacific Gallery.
Okay.
So
Everyone will find it. It's very easy.
Yeah. So I think there'll be a lot of. There's going to be a plethora of incredible artwork on the walls. Great artists.
Yeah.
And I think the show will be up for about a month.
Okay,
And
cool.
a lot of the surf industry.
So if you don't
people
make
will
it
be
that
there and
day,
all that.
you can just
you
got a month to cruise in
Be
there.
there. Yep.
Yeah, cool.
And then so that's right here with the U.S. Open in about a week.
Okay. As for surfers, do you have a artist that inspired you? Is there one in particular, or one?
An artist that surfs?
Well, either or. Just an artist in general. Someone you looked up to.
But it's funny. I come from the school of in surfing. I never had a favorite surfer.
Not Rick Griffin.
Well, I never had a favorite surfer. I could look at a bunch of different surfers and pick something out of it that I loved.
Okay.
Rick Griffin is insane.
Gnarly. Yeah, the best.
Incredible.
Right.
But there's people like Julian Schnabel that also surfs.
Okay.
But his art is in a whole other direction. Mm-hmm. I love what you mentioned, Ozzie Wright.
Yeah.
Like guys
Ozzie
like
Wright.
that and what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like Barney. Barney was a friend and an amazing artist. And I hope someday a brand like Volcom will do a proper show for him and his life's work.
That'd be sick.
Right. So throwing that out there for anybody listening. Barney
Volcom
show
has money.
should happen.
Volcom has money.
Yep, exactly. I have so many influences, and I'm fans of so many people's work.
Right. Okay. I get that.
Yeah, and huge respect for so many people, even like people that I've, different graffiti writers and people down here that you would only know in the graffiti scene.
Okay. Those
people, so talented, and what they do blows my mind. So I'm constantly feeding off of all these directions. And it all comes, through me in my own way.
Do you have a baseline where you always start? Does that make sense? This is how my art starts, and it may go over this way or it may go that way. Does that make sense?
Sometimes I have an idea. Like the series you see in here right now is based
So you do series,
on the Love Is comics.
Okay.
So for those people listening, in the LA Times, in the comic strip, there was a cell that would come out every day called Love Is. And there were these simple characters, and then there would be a little phrase like "Love is a new dimension," or "What changes everything," or "Following your heart," or "A powerful force," or "Always first." And I'm reading different ones here in the studio, and I took those little cells and I've blown them up massive. And some of those things, like one of the pieces that's going into the Swing Street Gallery, is "Love is," and it says "Your choice." And so when you think of your choice, that's politically prevalent right now. When you look at this piece, I'm going to turn around so I can look at it and talk to it. You look at it, and these are massive, but when you look into the work, you see that there's a whole world behind it. And so in that, when you think of the thing, the theme of love is your choice, obviously there's political implications into, voting and things like that are going on right now. But in the background here, we have all kinds of performers, from Kurt Cobain and singing about being happy, right? Below him, you see Elvis and what he brought. Below that, you see Madonna and her performances. Here is the awful truth about males and females. There's the Beatles. We have Iron Maiden. We have Alicia Keys and Pink. We have Britney Spears, and you think about all the stuff in her in the press recently, to Bob Marley, him saying, can't we all sing this song of freedom?
I even think I see a Maiden one.
Yeah, you see the Iron Maiden.
I don't see the Iron Maiden, I see the Maiden.
You got some Metallica right over here.
Sex Pistols up top on the other one.
Yep. And so the Clash. And so you have these different inspirations of people. Like when you think of art and what it does for you, it moves you. Mm-hmm. Like whether you understand a painting or not, you get a hit from it when you approach it. When you think of music, we all have songs that have moved us, that we hold on to, that inspire us, right?
Yeah.
And so riffing off of these artists and the way that they've resonated through the world with their messages, tidying up with a little simple thing that says love is basically your choice. You can choose how you want to live your life and how you want to look after each other and what we want the world to be and how we want to take care of it.
Okay.
Like some pretty simple messages, but are really profound.
You're in a gallery, you're doing your showing,
Yep.
and people are walking up and introducing themselves to you and talking to you about your art.
Yeah.
Do you let them interpret themselves, or do you give them your interpretation of it, or how does that work?
Both.
Both?
Either.
Okay.
Like my job is to do the work.
Okay.
Right? I can explain where it comes from.
Or you, I gotcha.
And then how you take it and interpret it, it stirs things up. And so it can take on a different meaning for you.
Yeah.
I've walked through shows where people, it's funny, there was a show at the Dogtown Space in Santa Monica. This is years back.
Yeah.
And I had a body work through the gallery. And I'd gone outside, it was the opening, and I walked back in with a bunch of people that I didn't know. And I walked the show with them and listened to their conversation about the work and about who the artist was.
Yeah.
And all the assumptions that they made about who I was.
Yeah.
And they were describing me as someone very different in like, they were talking about what the artist looked like and what this must be about. And all of these things. So I was walking with them, just listening. And the assumptions were amazing, but it sparked these conversations that were really cool. Like it was bringing up topics that then they were talking about, and they liked this piece more than the other and all that. And I thought that was really cool because they had their full experience, and I was able to hand it off with the work. I later talked to them and explained some more, and like they connected more. But I love the fact that it can hang on a wall and do its own job.
Okay. Yeah, that's rad.
Yeah.
How did you feel? And you kind of described it when they said they like this piece more than this piece. It's like a song. It's like a surfer. You could have a favorite surfer or a favorite ride, and it's subjective. Somebody might, if you were to have a wave, somebody might want to do a big air. Somebody might want to do a big turn. Either one can be beautiful. Either one could be total crap. Right on.
And so this is me like doing my best and then letting it fly. At some point I hand it off and it becomes the viewers.
All right. And then your clothing line, what is that? What inspired you to do that? Obviously the art.
Well, I grew up around brands.
Okay.
Right. So you're in high school, a buddy of mine who was silk screening for Stussy, my middle name is Torquato. We created a little line called Torque.
So that's been around since high school?
Yeah.
Oh,
and we like drew a wave. I drew out Torque and we put them on t-shirts and sweatshirts. I still got a couple of them.
Oh, rad.
And I saw how brands started. I watched guys like Michael Thompson and, and Gotcha or Stussy or Jack Denny and World Jungle. And even like, I surf for brands like Quicksilver and such, where you see like Echo Beach, how they like how a logo became a family,
Okay.
right? And then creative goods fell out under it. So from my artwork, when we talk about apparel and these goods,
Yeah.
I'll take a certain theme, like reef paintings. When I go on a surf trip, I take rolls of canvas. When the tide goes out, I'll get the canvas wet, get it on the exposed reef, fit it into the nooks and crannies, and use different techniques to make an imprint from the reef.
Okay.
I photographed the area, so I got all the colors and patterns. I'll bring it back to the studio and finish it off as one of these, what I call reef paintings.
Yeah.
And so then I take the reef paintings, photograph it, and then use that as prints. Like the pillows you're sitting on now, these are all reef paintings from different locations. So like this one over here is from Maui. The one next to it's from Chile. The one in the middle here is from the Mentawais. The one right there in your hand is from Sumatra, and that one's from Nicaragua.
Wow.
Different palettes, different formations in nature.
They're similar, but they're yet so different.
And if you think about,
Right?
if you really observe when you travel and go surf these different spots,
of course, yeah.
the flowers, the fauna, like color, shape, form is all different. And then also those differences reflect what's going on in the area, how things are being developed, how well nature's being preserved, how nature's being affected by, development or overfishing. It leads you into these categories, these topics of conversation that come out in the work. So I'll take something like the reef paintings and those, and then I'll put them out into garments. And so we're doing everything from shoes and sandals to sweats, shorts, bikinis, towels, bags, backpacks. I'm creating a whole line of gear that reflects my travels and my journey in this work, pulled from certain pieces that really resonate.
Okay.
I mentioned a piece that I call MapQuest, which is a painting of downtown LA from the point of view of an airplane at night. So at night, like from these surf travels, you always circle around downtown LA. It looks like a big computer chip. And it gives me the notion that everybody's in this together. Everybody's doing their part, right, to create. And, we're all connected in this.
Yeah.
So the painting is of looking at these patterns that as man we've created, right? And so I've created products from that, but those are all man-made structures, rhythms, and patterns, whereas these other ones, the reef paintings, are more organic. That's what nature's created. I'm just giving nature a voice.
Okay. Wow. All right. Yeah, because they're different.
They're different, right?
A lot different.
Yeah, different techniques, different...
Do you have to be in a certain mindset to do one or the other?
Well,
when you wake up in the morning, do you know what you're doing, or do you just let it happen?
It can be both. Or I should say, it could be either and or both. It depends. Like if I have a show coming up, I'm focused on certain things.
Yes.
Other times, I'm pushing a series along.
Yeah.
I usually, out of probably insecurity or some of those things, what I'm currently working on is usually a couple steps ahead of what I'm showing.
Okay.
So by the time something I'm showing, I've had the time to allow it to land where I think it needs to be.
Okay.
So my mind's usually a couple steps ahead on things.
Okay.
So I got plenty of other stuff that I haven't shown yet.
Yeah.
That will come up.
Okay. And then is the clothing line available to the public?
Yeah.
And how do you find that?
I have a website called iamtorquato.com, and there's a shop on there.
Yep.
And there's all kinds of stuff on there that you can purchase directly, and it gets shipped straight to your house.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'll do pop-ups or collaborations with other either retail spaces or other brands.
Oh, right.
So, and all of the pricing on my website is basically what the wholesale prices would be.
Okay.
When we go to a retail space, they'll double it.
Yeah.
So
Well, they have to.
yeah. So there's
Got to pay the rent.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all kinds of stuff from graphics with the painted surfboards on it to some of this all over print pattern work.
Okay.
Even into like what you saw, the bean bags and stuff like that.
Dude, that thing's sick.
So it's sick, right?
Yeah.
So it's the idea being that as artwork gets out in the world and as prices go up, I want it to be attainable for people that if they like it and enjoy it and want some of that message in their life, they can have it.
Okay.
And there's different points to enter into that experience.
All right. Right on. Let's talk about the Robert Downey Jr. thing real quick.
Oh,
Is he a fan of the art?
he is.
Yeah.
Dude, that's rad. There was did a show in Malibu.
Okay.
And he came in and he bought work.
Okay.
And I went and delivered the work to his house.
Oh, cool.
So I got to meet him.
Okay.
And he gave me a tour of this crazy bubble house he's built in Malibu.
Oh, wow.
And sweetest guy. I met his family. We hung out. And I'm also completely in awe because the dude's friggin' talented.
Yeah.
And a legend around the world.
And been in front of the camera and his art
Well, as
acting, art.
As an artist, he resonates in the world in a huge way.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
So
everyone knows who he is.
Yeah, I met him once, and that was wonderful. However, since then, he has appeared to win the MTV Awards with Iron Man.
Yeah.
With My Sunspot painting as his background.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
He did the same for the MTV Awards.
Yeah.
He did that. He promoted another. He likes my Torquato character.
Yeah.
So there's some of those in his house too.
Yeah.
And he just was promoting an artist, a musical artist that's breaking this summer in front of Torquato. So you see Torquato over his shoulder.
Okay.
And then there was a friend of mine from Italy just sent one to me that I hadn't seen, and it was celebrating 50 years of film, an award for another famous actor, and his whole presentation is again in front of the sunspots.
Wow.
And so to me, look, the guy has money and he can do whatever he wants.
Yes, of course.
But creatively, the fact that he likes being around my work and he's wanting to share it in presenting these things in the world, it's hugely flattering.
Yeah.
I don't,
for sure.
I don't think they've sold any more paintings because of it. I don't know how that works.
Uh-huh.
But the fact that I have such admiration for his skill and his and what he does and who he's become in the world, to be a fly on the wall in that environment.
You got accepted in. You're kind of in there.
Yeah. No, it makes me smile.
Yeah,
it feels really good, and it in a way that is validating that as a creative, someone who I greatly admire, appreciates the work, is incredibly validating to me. Okay. So I love it when anybody connects with a painting.
Yeah.
But if it's a bonus, if it's someone like that.
Yeah, for sure. And then one more question is in Malibu, and you surf Malibu. How often do you surf Malibu?
Yeah, it's funny. I used to surf Malibu a lot, but being closer to Topanga, I tend to surf there more. I really have a hard time with crowds. Yeah. And especially not being able to be in the water as often, throughout the day.
A couple less guys. Yeah. The competition for a wave is easy.
I find that I'm more of a crowd dodger these days.
Me too.
So I look for when it's good and when the wind comes up or there's windows at other little novelty spots.
I do that all the time.
I go there. I love Malibu. I love the waves. I have a lot of friends there.
Well, that's
my question. I don't surf there as often.
You would think you'd make some good art connections in Malibu.
100%.
You would think
Well,
that's where they're going.
Well, look, and
that's LA.
That's LA. And through being a surfer and an artist, it's put my work through entertainment, fashion, film, music, through these other categories that I'm a big fan of, things that inspire me, and my work's just continuing to find its way through there. And then being here downtown through those same kinds of channels more internationally.
Yeah, right on.
So it just slow growth, but it continues to evolve and get further out into the world.
And is it all joy? You painted all joy. Let's get to the bottom of it. Is art, is your life all joy? No one's life really is.
Not at all.
Okay.
Are you? I mean,
is that a wrong question to ask?
It makes perfect sense, and it's easy
because your pictures bring happiness.
Well, and it's easy to come to that conclusion because when you look at the work, you feel that. Oftentimes, it takes me being in a really dark. I've dealt with depression for many years,
Trippy.
and So for me, as I mentioned, art being therapeutic,
Mm-hmm.
me painting in color and big and loud
Yeah,
helps
yeah,
pull
that's a
me
way of- good way to
through and
describe it.
out of that. If I sit in that and go dark, that leads to bad things.
Yeah. But could be some good art too in there.
No. Well, and you're looking at it, looking around.
It's all joy though.
Well, but where it comes from, it's also working out other things that is therapeutic to move through them and express them and get them out. So it's being able to acknowledge some of that stuff. Okay. You know, I have the little Torquato character.
Yeah.
And the mantra is, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. And the messaging behind that is whatever you're going through, you have the tools to get through it. Whatever that obstacle is, whatever that hurdle is, whatever that thing is that's holding you down, there is something inside of you. There's a spirit that says, yes, you can. And so that perpetuating that out in the world for whatever you're going through, it's like, yeah, you got this. You know, you got the positive guy on the shoulder and the negative guy on the shoulder. It's like, let's go with the positive. Like, you got this. Okay. And so that being something for, that's a tool for myself. Okay. And then also to hand off to other people. So to me, that brings a lot of joy. Like, I have people slapping Torquato stickers all over towns, all over the world.
Can you get stickers?
Yeah.
You sell the stickers?
Yeah. I give out most of the stickers.
Okay.
You can buy them too, but I love, people send me photos of Torquato
that's right.
in these cities all over the world. Yeah. And the message remains, that Torquato is my middle name. Right. When you look it up, there's no definition for it. Yeah. So I created a definition for the name. Okay. And wrote it out of born of water and stoke. Torquato represents the spirit inside of each of us that says, yes, you can. Right. So by slapping it, by using it, you're activating that thing inside of yourself that says, fuck yeah, I got this. Okay. And so, to me, that feels good. Like, handing that off to kids, yeah, you got this. Go bigger. Yeah. Like, you think you can't win? You can fucking win. Go. Do it.
That's super cool.
And so, that, in doing that and saying that also gives me joy. Okay. And that gives me energy, and it fuels me to go give it to that other kid.
Right on.
So it's fun. Kids send me photos of where they've put Torquato, or they're mimicking what they think the voice of Torquato is.
Oh, that's funny.
and so there's all these little things, we've animated Torquato now, and I want to use that character. The goal is to use that character to activate the 5x game.
Oh, there you go.
Integrating these things, just constantly learning and evolving.
Right on.
So, yes, you can, brother.
Thanks a lot for doing this, man. I really appreciate it, Mike. It's
I appreciate you coming here.
That was fun. I'm glad I had to come here. We had to see the space.
I live and work in a living environment.
Yeah.
This place is always changing. You see, even the floor is a painting.
I like how you stop at at the kitchen, almost two different worlds. Well, it's kind of.
So
I noticed that. I
spent time in northern Sumatra at a place called Surfing Village, making a series of reef paintings. Okay. Making those impressions, and this floor is a map of the area that we were surfing through and where I was making the paintings. The vantage point from the front door, the rolling up door, the back door, and the kitchen all reflect the areas where you'd be checking the waves, or you'd be jumping off the boat, paddling through the keyhole, or the high points where the waves would break. So it's an abstract map of that reef and that environment that takes me right back to being there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Different.
Totally.
Did you start that when you got the building? When you got the room? Or did you has it been a work in progress?
Well, I started it as soon as I moved in. I've been on that trip. And then I did it. And then there's a lot of overpaint that's happened through the different projects. But you do a lot. And then I'll clean the floor and then bring it forward so you actually see greater background. Oh, okay. So as soon as I add another layer on top, there's more layers behind it, and that's what creates the depth.
Right on. Dude, thank you so much for joining the QuiverCast. Really, really appreciate it. You got any final words?
No, just a big thank you and gratitude. Thanks for the opportunity. Fun. I really appreciate it.
I learned a lot today. All right. This is Mike, and we are out of here. Later. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Please follow us on Instagram and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Give us 5 stars if you listen to us on Apple. And do me a favor and tell a friend that QuiverCast is back. I'd like to thank Blue Factory and Dave Hegstrom for the music. And I'll see you all in the lineup. Hey, you guys, Endless Summer box set. This thing is legit. It's authentic, numbered certificate in it. It has a 5-frame film strip from the original print. You will literally own a piece of history. It has a specially minted bronze medallion. Dude, that thing's sick. Okay, there's so much more here. Go to the show notes. There's a link on there. Go check this piece of history out. This thing's rad. Seriously. Smithsonian American History Museum has it. It took 4 years of research with 3.5 in production, all hand assembled. This thing's rad. There's so much to this awesome box set. Remastered DVD, sharper images than the original film, but dude, this thing's so sick. Link in the show notes.